Yeah, I think we should start. It's yeah. Myself, Vidya Shankar Das. I'm a research scholar in Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai, and I'm the member of Democratic Research Scholar Organization (DrSO). And on behalf of our organization, I welcome you all, whoever on Google Meet and YouTube. So this session is being live streamed from our YouTube channel, Democratic Research Scholar Organization. So I welcome you all, and to give some perspective about this webinar, I will just say a few words. So you all know that about 2 months back, we had same kind of national level webinar regarding the policies in time of COVID, funding in research in time of COVID. And we got huge response from scholars around the country, like about 1,000 scholars actually attended that program. And after that, the thing is, so several scholars actually participated in the meeting. We had email ID and phone number of them, but we don't know personally. We don't know them personally, and also from DrSO also we don't know them. So we thought to consolidate this to increase our reach in scholars. We should have a one-to-one meeting with scholars from different region of India. Yeah. So for last 1 month or so, we have several meetings with general scholars took part in several activities our several activities like webinar or signature campaign, something like that. So we actually asked them that what they expect from DrSO, what are the issues they think we should take up for movement. And they pointed out several things. We also learned from them. We didn't know several issues they are facing in their institute locally. So that was a great experience to talk with scholars who, before this meeting, we were like completely unknown to each other. So after this meeting, we can say that they at least know something about DrSO, and we know something about them. So in those meetings, several scholars actually inform, and it's remarkable that throughout India, wherever we organize this kind of interaction meetings, several scholars actually raise concern about this National Education Policy 2020, and they wanted to learn what is written there and what is the impact of that in future in research. So they asked. So this is they told that yeah, this is very important, and we can discuss on this topic. So we immediately within 2 weeks we decided to organize a webinar on this very topic, national education policy. We have two distinguished speakers with us. I will introduce them later. But initially, I would like to call Argho Das. He is one of the joint conveners of DrSO. So I request Argho to say something before we start our webinar. Argho.
Thank you, Shankar, and thank you all the scholar friends who are here in the webinar. So I just beg your pardon at the beginning. I am in a slightly a bit difficult condition, so you may hear some lot of other noise. Still, I try to convey what I feel about this webinar and what it is all about. What is DrSO? So just to begin with, DrSO came into being as a common platform of research scholars in 2012. So it is 8 years. So there are a lot of issues, a lot of problems research scholars face, but initially, of course, they are not united. There have been problems, they want to tackle it within their institutions, but gradually it came to know that all these problems and issues they are very common. So in a very common manner, we should try to tackle them. And while we start to understand ourselves, we start to understand our problems, our issues, our commonness, we understand that all these things are connected to the policies the governments they are taking. So at the same time, while we are organizing ourselves in a strong unity to fight all the problems and issues, at the same time, we try to understand the problems, understand the policies through which all these problems are coming up. So in this way, we proceed and we started from say some 10, 12 scholars in 2, 3 institutions in Kolkata, and now today in the way of movement and in the way of building up the solidarity, we are organizing all India initiatives where the research scholars in all the states they are coming together and they are placing their problems, and in this way not only we are fighting our problems but we are also building up our bonding and solidarity, a great friendship among the research scholars that we build up. And as we are friends, as we become friends, we start to understand ourselves, we stand together also. This is what the motto of DrSO is. And of course, to connect ourselves with the greater society, this is why we call research scholar as a human being for the human being. So a lot of movements have been conducted over the years. You may be aware of the fellowship hike movements that have been conducted in 2014, 2019. Apart from that, there have been several institution-wide movements. Even during this lockdown period, within so much difficulties, we are conducting movements in universities and achieving victory. In Karnataka, in West Bengal, in several other parts of the country, we are coordinating research scholars and their voices and to take it to higher authorities and to push them to an extent where they are compelled to, I mean, agree without justified demands. And in this part of our movement and initiatives, we are conducting this webinar. As you know, that this new educational policy that has came up very recently in this lockdown period, and this policy is supposed to have a great effect on entire education. And entire education means school education, higher education, and research. So as research scholars who are at the highest level of the education, we must concern ourselves that what is going to change in the entire education sector and in the entire scenario of research and society because of this education policy. So with its part, we started this thing that this webinar, we focus this webinar on the effect of the education policy on research and higher education. So this is, as you see, that the policies that control everything from Gujarat to Manipur to Kashmir to Kanyakumari, whether we like it or whether we do not like it, all the things, all the tidbits that are being controlled by these policies, what will be the fees, what will be the fellowship, whether we will get jobs or not, how research scholars will be treated during their tenure, all these are controlled by these policies. So we really need to understand and really need to act according to that understanding and to fight whatever negative and regressive are there. So this is the motto. With this motto, we are organizing this webinar. So I will just not prolong anything. We are very eager to learn from our eminent speakers who are not only eminent scientists but also they have eminent role in science movement and in education movement. So we will learn from them, and I will get back to Dibbo to introduce the speakers and get us into the main session. So thank you again, and thank you all the scholars to be here. Really congratulate, and I am extremely happy. And on behalf of DrSO, I congratulate you all again. Over to Dibbo.
Yeah, thanks, Argo, for this very nice introduction about the context of this webinar, actually. So without further delay, I will just quickly introduce two speakers we have today. So first, we'll hear from Professor Amitava Datta, and then Dr. Francis K. So Dr. Francis K is he is an assistant professor in Department of Electronics and Mass Communication in KRGA College of Engineering in Kerala. And so, if I say a little more about Professor Datta, he is now an INSA senior scientist, emeritus professor in Department of Physics, University of Calcutta. So he has made significant contribution in his research field, which is high energy physics, and he has played a major role in the development of high energy physics environment, so-called, in our country. And so he had associateship with ICTP Trieste, Italy from 1991 to 95, and then in Institute of Theoretical Physics, Beijing, 1997 to 1999. So he had held a visiting position at energy physics centers in India, Pendlab, SA, and Delhi. And he was elected as Indian Science Academy Fellow in 2014. Sorry, 2004. Apart from his academic interests, he is also very much active in science movement in the country. And we are very glad to have him in our webinar. So, Professor Amitava. Sir, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead, sir. Yeah. Can you be a little closer so that we can see you better?
Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's okay, fine.
All right, so greetings to all the friends who are listening to this webinar. Greetings to the organizers, and greetings to all my greetings to my co-speaker, Dr. Francis K. Now I will talk on some selected topics on National Education Policy 2020, which actually the organizers proposed to me. Now I will use a PowerPoint presentation, and so I will go to the screen sharing mode. So can you see the PowerPoint presentation?
No, sir, we can't.
Oh, why? So tell me what I have to do. I have to go to the screen sharing.
So from this button at the right, present now, there is an option.
Yeah.
Yeah, go to that, and you, as you wish, like if you want to share the entire screen or to some specific window, you can do like that.
Okay. So present now, and then I share the entire screen.
Yeah.
Then I get a new tab which says share.
Yeah.
So I say share. And then I open the PowerPoint.
Sir,
Sorry?
Sir, you have to click on that window tab. Then you have to click on the share. Otherwise, the share option is blurred. So,
window tab means?
After clicking the present and the present entire screen, a new tab is opened now. And then click on that screen.
Yes, I screen.
So click on that, then select that actually, then click on the share button.
Okay, then I click on the share button, and now I open the PowerPoint. Can you see now?
Yeah, now we can see. Yeah.
Good.
If you just go to presentation, yeah. Nice.
All
Yeah,
right.
perfect.
So as you all know that our last national education policy was formulated in 1986, and after a good many years we now have a national education policy which is supposed to take us to the 21st century. Now if you go through this policy, you will find many buzzwords, holistic education, multidisciplinary education, world-class education, online or digital education, value-based education. But I will focus on a particular thing which is relatively new, that is private stroke philanthropic funds. Now, private funds, we have seen enough private institutions operating in this country, but this private stroke philanthropic, this is something new. Of course, we know that there are philanthropic organizations which fund education, but in a policy highlighting this again and again, this is something new. So we will talk a little bit about this, but I think before we discuss anything, it is important to review very briefly that where we stand. Only then we will understand whether the policy is relevant or whether we are trying to build castles on sand. So where we stand now, well, I will just give you a current status of the school education, because after all, school education is the entry to higher educations. And I will not talk about any arbitrary data. I will talk about NCERT data on National Achievement Survey. So this data is taken from schools all over the country. And you see that this data corresponds to 4 classes, class 3 to class 10. And L stands for language and M stands for mathematics. And the obvious thing is at class 3, everybody is doing fairly well. This is the national average score, 67%, not too bad. But then by the time they reach class 10, it drops to 49%. And in mathematics, it is even more alarming. With 63% for class 3, it drops to 34% for class 10. The obvious conclusion is that tougher the study, the result goes down. Now we have to understand that I have not gone into the finer details. Like in language, I have only presented an average score. It has been noted that if it is reading, the result is good. But if one wants to fathom the reading comprehension, how much they understand, and then the result goes down. So this is one point to remember, that we are not doing very well in school education. Now, where is the fault? Well, government doesn't spend enough money, teachers' training is bad, there is too much teaching load on the teachers. But whatever be the reason, is it wise to extend the Right to Education Act so that everybody from 3 to 18 years is included? You may remember that the current range is 6 to 14 years. Now, so the government is willing to take extra load. I don't mind that, but don't do it at the expense of making the existing education worse. And what is a particular funny proposal from the government? I have told you that the previous test was taken by NCERT, and they say, and they do it again and again throughout the policy, that it is better to set up a national assessment center instead of NCERT, and that will fix all the problems. Now, this is unbelievable. The root of the problem is elsewhere. Now, here research scholars So you will immediately recognize if I draw your attention to a problem in higher education, and this is the UGC NET result of 2018, and about 7 lakhs, okay, a little less than 7 lakhs candidates participate in all subjects, and we find that the result is, so far as the assistant professor qualification is concerned, only 6.5% cleared it across the subjects. And if you talk about assistant professor and JRF, it is less than 1%. Now, what is going on? We are talking about 21st century education with various qualifications, holistic education, but our basics are not right. What is going on? I'll come back to it. Now I will talk again a little bit about another global standard education, and you may have heard about it. This is the so-called choice-based credit system. It is basically a semester system, and of course you get credits for the course you take, but that's not the point. Now, why do we do it? And UGC, who introduced this, says that the students can choose interdisciplinary and intradisciplinary courses. Now, very nice. For example, physics students can read economics, microbiology students can have chemistry or environmental science, so on and so forth. So it's multidisciplinary. But my friends, you have to realize that once you give more choices, you need more classrooms at least, because simultaneously many classes will be going on. And you also need more teachers. Now, UGC recognizes that. Here you see the disadvantages. In plain word, they said that teaching load will increase. And in fact, a friend of mine had calculated the teaching load, and it turns out that the average load for a teacher, assuming that a department has 5 permanent faculties, undergraduate, the average teaching load will be 118 hours in 5 days. And UGC also notes that good infrastructure is needed. And will you believe me if I tell you that no additional support in terms of manpower and infrastructure was provided either by the central government or by the state government? Now, what is going on? Is this global education? You want to get global education for free, no expenditure for the government. Now, with that, keep that in mind, that whatever the government promises doesn't come. Now I come to the question of privatization. And as I told you, if you go through the policy, you will find this private philanthropic activity is coming again and again. Government will depend on private philanthropic activity, and public institutions are advised to take advantages of private philanthropic funds. Now, my dear friends, I am aware of the fact that sometimes the alumni, they donate handsomely to their mother institution. There are also organizations, NGOs, and so on. But can private philanthropic activity be the backbone of a national education policy? I think, in my opinion, this is absurd, and there is a very simple thing you can look at. See, a philanthropic activity does not depend on a new policy. So if there are philanthropists, they were here all along in this country. And how many private organizations have you heard of which has offered highly subsidized quality education? In my opinion, it is very few. So the basic assumption of the government that private philanthropic activities will contribute substantially to our education, I think it is not realistic. If you talk about cooperation or collaboration between industry and academic institutions, I understand. Now that also has positive and negative point, but that's not unnatural. But simply philanthropy supporting a new educational policy, in my opinion, is not realistic. Now it is not true that the government doesn't know it. The government point out that they have not been able to curb commercialization and economic exploitation of the parents by many for-profit private schools. But yet, for some strange reason, they feel that at the same time, it has all too often inadvertently discouraged public-inspired private philanthropic schools. I cannot recall a single example where a private philanthropic school was not allowed by any government policy. But even more damaging policy is a document from 2012, and this is the Justice Verma Commission report, which was actually ordered by the Supreme Court when people complained against the private teacher training institution. And one of the findings of the Verma committee is about more than 10,000 such schools, teachers training institutions were found, and they not even attempt serious teacher education, but essentially selling degrees for a price. Now, teachers training will come again and again in the new education policy because they are talking about new things and they have to train the teachers for that. But look at the status of teachers training in our country. Now, so much about privatization. I believe the government doesn't have a comprehension. They have not clearly pointed out how much support will come from the government, how much they expect from private contributions, be it philanthropic or profit motivated. Now, the next thing on the agenda is online education. This is a very hot topic now. The first thing I would like to draw your attention to the fact that the draft policy was adopted last year by the Kasturirangan committee. And at that time, COVID was simply not in the picture. This year, the advent of COVID and the possibility that it can recur again and again has opened a completely new scenario. You have to see, if you want to implement online education, you have to make a very realistic check of how our educational institutions are prepared to do this. Now, as you all know, the minimum set of equipment, this is absolutely minimum for the students, is uninterrupted net connectivity. If the net goes off during a lecture, it kills the lecture. And then mobile or laptop. Now I put a question mark here, mobile. After teaching for more than 40 years, I cannot see, I mean, students who are learning ABCD or, from pictures, maybe mobile is suitable. But how the hell you can understand a big equation, big and complicated equation, just watching a mobile screen, which is very small for the purpose. Laptop is better, but even that is not sufficient. Teachers, of course, will also need the same equipment. Now let us look at the availability of the minimum equipment. Now there was a national sample survey from July 2017 to August 2018, and in West Bengal, it was found that only 9.4% families have a computer and 16.5% have laptop. Maybe over the last 2 years, the percentage has changed a little bit, but I wouldn't agree that it has changed drastically so that almost everybody enjoy this facility. So far as the national scenario is concerned, it is not very brighter. It is about 10.7% so far as the computers are concerned, and 23.8% so far as internet. Now, more recently, NCERT, they have carried out a survey And now it is students without laptops or smartphones, and that is 27%. So nearly 1/4 of the students of this elite schools, CBSE and central schools and Jawahar Navodaya schools, they are better off compared to a village school. And even in that case, nearly or a little more than a quarter of the students do not enjoy the basic facilities. So are we ready for online teaching? And then online teaching is not the only thing. There are other slangs. One is, where is the scope of interaction among the teachers and the students? Now I have taught more than 40 years of my life, and unless I can see the faces of the students in the class, I cannot figure out what the hell I am doing. If I find them yawning, making a blank face, I immediately realize that I am not doing a good job. On the other hand, if they look interested, enthusiastic, then I know that I am doing a reasonable good job. Now this cannot be an absolute substitute. The next question, of course, is, are the teachers familiar with the methods of online teaching? Or more important, online exams. Now online exams, I'm sure some of you have appeared in some online exams, but they're only multiple choice. But suppose a student of language who is supposed to write an essay on something, and how does he or she go through an online exam? This is practically impossible. And then of course science students have practical classes, and I found actually one of the most hilarious statements in the National Education Policy, and they will go for virtual labs. Now what the hell is this? I mean, doing an experiment is to know the experiment, to know the difficulties, how to adjust if there is some difficulty, and so on and so forth. And how does virtual lab be a replacement? So the only thing is that they have not thought about online teaching seriously. Last year when the policy was formulated, online teaching was just an alternative because there was no COVID. Now the scenario has changed completely, and one has to take online teaching much more seriously, but at the same time one has to provide the students and the teachers with proper facilities, and I don't find any thinking. Now what the government thinks, well, again, futuristic. In the meantime, they will improve the existing digital platforms. Now I say that the digital platforms doesn't exist, so improving or optimizing the existing facility is not adequate. You have to build up, and for that much more commitment and much more thinking is needed. And then they again go to their global standard mode, and they say that we can reduce the digital divide using television and community radio and radio. Now this is another hilarious thing. Television is audio visual, right? You can see, and so at least it can do something. What radio does in science teaching, where you have to draw diagrams, where you have to show equations, radio is very good for popular science education. But how does radio help in professional education? And any policy which says that radio is meaningless. And then they talk about training and incentives for teachers. You have already seen the state of affairs with teachers' education in this country, then online assessment and examinations. We have talked about it. And then again, the world-class thing. It's a dedicated unit for building world-class digital infrastructure. Very nice, but it will take time. What are you going to do now? Do you have any suggestion for the immediate future? And now I will ask a very inconvenient question. That teachers training is going on for a long time. How many teachers use animations, computer graphics in the class? They have done 4 years B.Ed course. In some cases, probably it is 5 years. And the issue of introducing modern technology in the classroom has not been taken into account. This government is there already for 7 years. What they have done? And then how do we trust that they will give fantastic training to the teachers so that they will be ready for online education? I believe a lot more is needed. And then I come to another very important point, and that is the so-called value-based education. Now, what is value-based education? I'm hearing some noise. What is value-based education? Well, the first question will come, what kind of values? Everybody's value system is not the same. And yes, the policy gives you an answer. They will teach various human values like Satya, Shanti, Prem, very nice. But let us focus on 2 points. One is righteous conduct, and its translation is dharma. Now, I was dumbfounded because I thought I knew the meaning of righteous conduct. And so I went back to the dictionary. And I confirmed that the meaning of righteous conduct is not dharma. It says that do something which is morally correct, which is a completely secular concept. You follow certain morality. Well, all this Shanti, Dharma, etc., they come within the purview of morality. But it is not Dharma. Then I come to the scientific temper, which was the other point. And as many of you may know, that there is already scientific temper in our constitution. It is a duty of our citizens to develop scientific temper and spirit of inquiry, the two are related. Now, how does the policy do about it? Now, let me tell you, in the draft policy which was circulated, there was an entire subsection on scientific temper, and it talked about very rationally about the scientific temper. It says that you have to rely on evidence-based learning, and you have to be rational in analyzing the information that you have. And they say that the scientific method will be incorporated throughout the entire school curriculum in science as well as traditionally non-science subjects. Now, this is a new thing, and they give nice examples. For example, you are talking about history, and then you have to rely on archaeological and literary evidences. Before you believe something is true in history, you have to depend on archaeology. And there begins the problem, because when it comes to evidence, one can ask very inconvenient questions. That how do we know that the Ram Janma Bhoomi was in a particular spot in Ayodhya? Which history tells me? Now, of course, the policy didn't take a chance. They have dropped entirely the subsection 4.6.1 from the final document. So now scientific temper is just a word like Shutto, Prem, and Shanti in the document. But we cannot leave it at that. We have to look into a little bit that what was there in the draft resolution. They say that evidence-based and scientific thinking will naturally lead to rational, ethical, and compassionate. Ethical, because any ethical person will realize that telling lie is not the proper thing to do. So fudging history is not the proper thing to do. Fudging literature is not the proper thing to do. That's unethical. And they hope that this development of scientific temper will produce individuals who are good logical and sound in decision making throughout their life. So much about scientific temper. Now I will come to another aspect. And you see, no policy will tell you that, look, I mean, this is going to be a communal policy. Nobody can do that, at least in a secular country. So they have to go in roundabout way. And this is a newspaper report on the statement of certain intellectuals. And they feel that there is a several threat to the secular fabric of the education system. Syllabuses have been changed drastically. Science and history has been replaced with myths and Puranas, and historical facts are destroyed, and people are appointed in different institutions and universities who belong to a particular politics and philosophy. Now, this is outrageous. Let me give you some example. Actually, this didn't. How much time I have, by the way? The moderator.
Sir, actually, we have very little time because we have the interaction session.
All right. So I will stop right here. Just give you an example of communalization of education. And this is not today's story. This started in 2001, actually, when Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the Prime Minister. And there is a man called Dinanath Batra, who is a big shot in the education cell of the RSS. And he edited a book, and the title of the book is outrageous. The Children of Marx, Macaulay, and Madrasa. They are what? They are the enemies of Indianization. Now, I have hardly seen a more communally oriented book in my entire life. But the important point is they pointed out in a separate chapter so-called distorted facts in the CBSE textbooks. And distorted facts mean they do not agree with their Hindutva arrangement. Now you know the same game is going on. They are changing textbooks produced by the NCERT, and their ground is that they want to get rid of certain Urdu poems, they want to get rid of certain historical facts. Even in science, they distort the fact by saying that in ancient India, there was stem cell research, which is totally baseless. So I won't take any more of your time. Let me end the lecture by pointing out that there are, at least in some sections, there is very little thinking. Online education is a particular one. Private education is also another one. And this communal orientation to our education system is very, very dangerous. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Yes, Dibbo, continue.
Yeah. Okay. No, you were supposed to. Okay, I just wanted to say one thing. It's at first, thanks, Professor Amitava, for this great presentation. So we wish we could hear more from you. Anyway, in the question and answer session, if someone asks, then surely we'll do interaction with you. And Piyush will introduce the next speaker. But before that, I want to say one thing, that please don't share anything or unmute yourself in the course of the when the speaker is speaking. So it creates creates problem. As Professor Datta was saying that in virtual meeting we have to have that. But anyway, so otherwise, if you don't stop screen sharing or something like that, we have to remove you from this meeting. We don't want to do that, but we have to. So Piyush, over to you. Introduce the next speaker.
Okay, thank you, Dibbo, and thank you also, Professor Datta. And I am not repeating it, but please the dear scholars, don't share your screen and don't unmute yourself. Now, after thanking Professor Datta, let me introduce Dr. Francis K. He is the Assistant Professor, Department of Electronics and Mass Communication from KRGA College of Engineering from Kerala. So he is the another speaker today, today's webinar on the new education policy. So I would like to request Dr. Francis to come and deliver his speech. Dr. Francis K, please. And
Sir, can you hear us?
is he not there?
I think he is not there. Can somebody call him?
He was there, probably for some time here.
Some technical problem.
Yeah.
I saw once he left. I thought he has rejoined. He has not rejoined. Please check it. Somebody can call him.
Yeah.
Shall I suggest one thing? Till Professor Francis comes,
Yes.
can we have some interaction with Professor Datta? You can just, let us not waste the time.
Yeah, that will be better. So whether when we are waiting for Professor Francis K. So we can have the interaction with Professor Amitava Datta now. So any scholars present here, if you want to say something, you can just unmute yourself. And if you wish, you can turn on your video also, and you can ask directly to Professor Datta. Well, otherwise, you can write on the chat also if you want. Yeah, no one is asking anything. So, okay, then let me ask one question from my side to Professor Datta. Actually, you already mentioned that in your presentation, but the thing is, in West, actually, in American culture, we see that several private agencies actually they do invest in education, and they have research institute where there are several research scholars actually doing work. So, why do you think that this is not a suitable alternative for India? In Indian perspective, why it's not good? I mean, you also know that this company and research, these introduction meetings are going on for long time, but till now we don't have this kind of research and industry link. So what do you think? What is the main cause it's not happening in India?
Well, I mean, first of all, you have to see that the industry has to be innovative. They want to bring out something new. And for that, they have an R&D section which can go to the universities to solve part of their problems. Now, I think this simply didn't happen in India in a large scale. There were, of course, some efforts here and there, but I mean, if you compare the collaboration between industry and universities, for example, or technical institutes or engineering colleges, I think compared to the Western countries, it was always minuscule because of the simple fact that our industry was not interested in innovation. And of course, it has to be a two-way process. But I will tell you, see, I taught at Jadavpur for a long time, from 1981 to 2008. Towards the end of my career, I found a colleague. He was getting invitation from various pharmacy companies, including Dr. Reddy's lab, for collaboration. But again, the work was not very innovative. They would send some samples. My friend will analyze them using X-ray diffractometer and then send it back to the company. It ended there. But I must also say that sometimes they wanted to sponsor some research scholars and so on and so forth. Now that is between a particular faculty and an industry. We had friends from the engineering section. They were doing mostly what is called consultation. That is, they were doing something, they face some problem, and then they comes to the engineering faculty in Jadavpur. It is not that they offer Jadavpur, let us say 10 crores of rupees, and say that you try to develop these things. If it goes down the drain, if nothing comes out, we don't care. This is what happens in America and in many European countries. The similar industries simply didn't exist in India. They were mainly interested in manufacturing, in producing, etc., etc. For example, we have so many coal mines, and we also have a coal research institute. But how many times you have heard that coal with better quality has come out for the international market? Never, because that kind of CSIR has labs for that, but never come out. So it is a thing that the mindset of a country which was under the British rule for many, many years, even after 70 years, we have not been able to shake off that kind of mentality. Let them be capitalist, but capitalism does not mean that they have to produce the same thing and sell it for a profit. They can innovate something, they can do something adventurous. But that kind of adventurism was not there in our country. So in my humble opinion, this is one of the main reasons. There are other reasons, of course, money and this and that. But in my opinion, this is one of the main reasons that our industrialists were not innovative.
Okay, yeah. We are having question in chat box, but for now we have Professor Francis K with us. So I suggest that we go with Professor Francis K's talk, and after that we'll do this interaction session. At that time, whoever wrote questions on chat box can ask directly. So over to you, Professor Francis K. Can you hear us? So your voice is breaking actually.
Can you hear?
Yeah, for sometimes we can hear, but mostly not.
I think the microphone is still muted, it shows.
Can you unmute yourself? Probably he's trying to rejoin. So this clearly shows the situation of internet in our country actually. So
Dr. Francis has joined just now.
okay, so can you unmute yourself, Professor? Hello? Hello? Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, you go ahead, keep speaking, so we can confirm.
I beg your pardon, because the year the was we experienced a recession and the heavy rain over here. So the connection rather erratic and weak also. I won't take much of your time. Now just intimate me when I overstep the limits. At the outset, to thank Democrat Research Organization for me to present it on the fortunately, Professor has did a very big task. She has helped in on every education. I shall limit myself in concerned issues with the research students. I do understand in a lot of and full in this from they are neither they are researchers nor they are students. They have in a transition period. So the problem confronted by and problems by the community, they have a unique approach. You recognize the fact that scientific research among aspects is
Sorry for interruption, but we actually can't hear you properly. I mean, it's continuously breaking. Can you try some other place maybe where the interconnection can be better?
I to move a little bit. I think but here, because of the heavy rain, the net connection is very erratic and weak. I try to this scientific research pass on researchers. They support society and obligation of the government to provide them support. Now, also means they should have subjects which they are undertaking for studies also. But here we find as the government is trying to stifle independent research. It is trying to dictate the terms of research by bringing new norms and conditions. And unfortunately, such an atmosphere will not help in this activities. So I would say that the research scholars, the problems faced by that is not different from the problems faced by the academic community in general. That we have try to understand what are the problems, ways the government is trying to suppress research, and then so it's actually it is a twofold. This to learn and sisters in this unique fight. We are supposed to academic community in this struggle. So actually the government of the day is resorting to the same trick where the governments in the past have been doing, saying that they will be allocating 6% of the GDP research education. But this is a trick to actually they are not doing anything for education. The annual outlay of education
Shall I
be
Dibbo? Hello?
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting. Professor Francis' voice
Yeah.
is breaking, is it not?
Yeah.
My one humble suggestion,
Yeah.
if Professor Francis can call somebody over phone call, make a phone call.
Okay.
That phone call you on the mic, loudspeaker.
Yeah.
Keep it near the computer or laptop. That may be better.
Yeah, I think.
That is the problem. Is suggestion all right?
Yeah, it will all right.
Okay,
So, Prof,
Dibbo, I am calling Dr. Francis. Okay, so
Okay. You put him.
okay.
yeah, you may speak.
So what I was trying to point out is that the problems confronted by the research scholars are in no way different from the problems confronted in general by the academic community. Now, with the proposals that have been put forward in the NEP,
Yes.
the 2200,
Professor Francis, in the Google,
is going much
otherwise there will be echo.
the allocation of fund has been steadily reduced. But to camouflage that, they are using all sorts of terms. Actually, the funds for education in general and research in particular has been steadily reduced. Another aspect which has been pointed out by Amitava, respected Amitava Datta, Professor Amitava Datta, is that education should finance itself on basis its finance philanthropic activities. Now, this cannot be allowed because those private entities have their particular agenda and they will not be able to take over what is to provide the necessary funds for the research activity. So consequently, we have to understand that the government of the day or the government is responsible for providing funds for education. And research scholars who happen to be neither students or not accredited researchers who are in a transition phase should be supported by the government because they are actually going forward to become accredited researchers, and they need support from the government and the society, from the society. So in order to gain such a point, we have to ventilate, disseminate our ideas among the academic community and the research scholars, organize themselves and come on a movement platform in cooperation with other members of the academic community, between of the student community, the teaching community, and scientists also, and organize democratic movements to force the government, to pressurize the government to withdraw this completely anti-people national education policy. That is all I would present now. If there are any questions later, I can answer it. Thank you.
We had a very severe problem, technical problem here. So we are sorry for that. It happened in Kerala. There is actually heavy rain. That's why this weak internet connection. So anyway, we can start the interaction session now. So participants can directly ask their question to Professor Datta, and for Professor Francis K, whatever we have heard from him, if you have some question, you can write on the chat. We will direct that question to Professor Francis K. So participants actually at that time raised some question. So if you just unmute yourself and ask. I think one is Mahbub. You raised a question at that time. Are you there?
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I have a question that MHRD has promoted IKS division for research and development purpose. Do you think that it will really help the research scholar for their employment purpose or the prosperity?
Yeah, Professor Datta, could you hear the question?
No, I couldn't hear it very clearly. It will be nice if you repeat.
Yeah,
Definitely, sir. My question is that MHRD has promoted IKS division for research and development purpose very recently. And do you think that it will really help the research scholar for their employment purpose or the prosperity for the research field or interdisciplinary research arena?
So MHRD has started something new. That's what she told.
Yeah.
What is that?
We promoted IKS division, IKS, Indian Knowledge Service for research and development purpose. IKS division recently has launched by MHRD. So do you think that it will really help the research scholar for their employment purpose or the prosperity purpose, or it will reduce the interdisciplinary research
Well,
field?
let me tell you, that I am very sorry to say that I am not aware of the activities of this new organization.
Yeah. It is recently launched by the MHRD.
I am not aware of the activities of this organization. So I cannot answer your question.
Okay, so may I ask this question to Professor Francis? Professor Francis is there. Can you hear Professor Francis?
I think he is over call, right, Piju?
Yeah.
No. He left from the call also.
Oh,
I am calling him again. So please wait.
So anybody can answer. Anybody can answer, sir. Here, uh, anybody can address the question that
okay. We
Turkey has promoted the IKS division for the research scholar. So,
Can you spell out the abbreviation ITS?
I can say it is actually Indian Knowledge Service. The IKS division stands for Indian Knowledge Service, and this division has been promoted by the NHRD very recently, only for the research purpose, research scholar, and they have wider aspect. They have wider plans and programs for the research scholar, for the interdisciplinary field, for the women's research scholar. They have separate division for the women's research scholar also. So anybody can answer. Anybody can take a question.
So the most of us here are actually the research scholars. So maybe.
So it is my expectation from anybody. It is my here 139 and 82 participants are there, along with our prestigious teachers also there. Respected teachers are there. So it is my humble question that IPS division has been promoted by MHRD with a broader aspect, with a broader objectives. Do you think really that it will help us for our employment purpose, for our prosperity and prospect in future?
Yeah. So what I can suggest that I am also first time is hearing this term actually. So maybe I mean
actually they have given advertisement for this purpose, for the employment purpose.
Okay.
IKS has also they are taking the research scholar as the research officers and research associates. They are also taking employee also. They are engaging the employee also from the research scholars. So it is I think it is a broad hope. It is a wider hope for us. So anybody can.
So even if we cannot say directly anything about this IKS, but I think Professor Datta can address this issue, like this employment after PhD. What is the job and security after doing a PhD?
It's a great issue. It's a great question for us. No? Actually, education and employment is a two-way aspect.
Yeah. So that's if you want to comment on something on this.
Okay, so you see, regarding the employment issue, let me tell you that the first problem that arises is that after a student completes his or her PhD, if you go to the Western countries, you will find that a good fraction, I cannot quote the number, a good fraction goes to the industry. And why does the industry employ them? They employ them mainly because of two reasons. One is they believe that a student who has done his PhD can think analytically, can think rationally, and therefore he or she will find a suitable role in the industry. For example, I spent a good number of years in Germany during the 1990s and 2001 to 2007. I think 2007 was my last visit. Now, during that period, I have found a good many PhD students they went to industries, many to the software industry, but quite a few to banks and so on and so forth. Now, what the industry thought that the ability, for example, suppose somebody is a PhD in mathematics or physics, they would assume that they have a good skill in mathematics which can be used to do some innovative work at the bank, for example. Now, unfortunately, this culture has not developed. You see, if you look into our scenario, you will find that there are two kinds of employment. One is at the top institutions like IITs, IISERs, NITs, and so on and so forth. But obviously, those jobs are limited. And the other one is at colleges, for example. But the situation in the college is so bad. I am not saying anything against the college. Just because of the lack of infrastructure, the teaching load is backbreaking. So a fresh student doesn't want to go to the colleges. Although nowadays, even the college service commissions, they are appointing only PhDs. Without PhD, it is difficult. But the point is that had the environment in colleges, for example, I can tell you some 20, 30 years back, there was a UGC program which would allow a college teacher with full salary to go to a research institute or a university to get a PhD. In my opinion, that scheme is now defunct. So making further progress from a college job has become really, really difficult. The channel is practically closed. So therefore, it is obvious that students who have spent 5-6 years for his PhD degree wouldn't go to the college if he or she doesn't have the further opportunity. So between the two kinds of academic institutions, going to the premier institutions is difficult. There is too much competition. And going to the college level education is simply not attractive because of that. I have nothing against the college, but because of lack of infrastructure, because the colleges have not been given funds generously so that a teacher can still develop himself or herself in the off time. Now that possibility has, so unless this government and industry, I already told you that the interaction between the industry and the academics is, there are still certain fields where a PhD student can find a job in the industry, but that's not very easily obtained in this country. So I don't think the job scenario for the PhD students, no matter from which angle you look at it, is not very promising. So you have to make more coordinated efforts to make it happen. I mean, there is no channel, so to say, which looks very promising. This, of course, is my personal opinion.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Datta. So we have another question. It's from Avik Banerjee. He's a scholar in Bose Institute, Kolkata. So he's facing some problem with internet. So I'm just reading out what he has written in the chat. My question to Professor Datta is following. Present COVID situation has created a disparity among students. The schools and colleges are closed. Sorry. How to tackle the present scenario so that the students not having smartphone or laptops can continue their education seamlessly. So I think the question is like this is the opportunity.
In fact, I touched this question. You see, what happened is that there was a public discussion on NEP 2020 last year, when there was a committee which produced a draft policy, and there was some discussion on online education. But in that scenario, online education was just one more alternative. For example, in distant learning, online education can play an important role. But COVID was not there. So the draft of this policy, NEP 2020, was not formulated in a situation where COVID was really very, very serious. But now it is serious and it can recur. Many doctors are saying that there can be a second wave, third wave, fourth wave, and nobody knows when the vaccine is going to come and how effective with the vaccine. So a full exercise should have been done in the context of COVID, assuming that the draft education policy has become now practically obsolete because the problem was not there. But if I read this policy, I find that there is very few new things in this policy, just as the draft national policy treated online education as just an alternative to regular education. This policy also treats, there is no concrete suggestion that how to build up a online education within a few months or so. There is nothing. They have talked about all kinds of irrelevant things, that we will build up an infrastructure, we'll do this, we will do that. But there is absolutely no fresh thinking over this digital divide. That is, a number of students are actually isolated from education because of this COVID problem. Now, whatever is being done is also hardly adequate, because I told you that I simply don't believe that online teaching can be propagated using smartphones. The screen is too small. Any serious thinking. And then there are, of course, additional problems which I talked about. So in my opinion, after the advent of the COVID, a completely new look, a completely new decision should have been taken, which this government didn't do. The pretty obvious things that they say about online teaching in their policy, it occupies 2 pages. It gives no glimpse of any serious thinking in that. This again is my personal opinion.
Okay, thank you, Professor Datta. So we have another question from Mahbub. I think Mahbub, you were here in the participant list. So if you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yeah, very clearly. Yeah.
Okay. So my question, I have 2 questions. So I am asking the first question. In the NEP 2020, it has been said that the foreign universities may open campus in India.
Yes.
And yes, obviously they will do business here. But my question is, why our government is not enhancing our own premium institutes like IITs, NITs, IJRs, etc., rather than focusing on foreign private institutions? That's my question.
Well, let me first give an introductory answer, and then I will come to your question. Now, even the IITs, IISERs, and so on are not sufficient to give good quality teaching to all the students, simply because of the fact that the number of students is very large in this country, And the reason for this mess is, since our independence, we have never given the due attention to the college and university level education. And that has created this mess. Had we a college system which is strong, a university system which is strong, if you look into the financial aspect of this, you will find that, we organize something called March for Science every year. This year we could not organize it because of the COVID problem. And we have been, by we I mean scientists from all over India, we have been asking for 10% of the GDP should come into the education system. Only then one can do justice to the colleges and the universities. So forget about foreign investment. Even with our IITs and IISCRs and so on and so forth, NIT, we can do very little. We can do very little justice to the large number of good students that we have. If you have noticed, you will find that in lower classes, see, that was the first table I showed. In lower classes, the students are doing fairly well. But as you go to higher classes, you find that the result is deteriorating. Simply because there is no money, there is no infrastructure, there is no good educational environment in the schools and colleges. So now these guys are trying to throw certain buzzwords like, you will get global standard education, foreign universities will come to teach you, but this will never happen. This has never happened. You have to see the Britishers, they were foreigners, they were first-rank researchers. They occupied our countries for 200 years or so. Nothing happened. We had some individual brilliance, but our institutions were not developed properly. Now one hoped that after the independence, higher education will be given its due share and the government will try to improve the colleges and the universities. Now, if you look into old papers, you will find that after independence, a few big organizations like DAE, the Department of Agriculture, by the way, they used their money well. So we had the Green Revolution, DAE, ISRO, etc., etc. Compared to them, the universities and colleges did not get nothing. So now that we do not have good quality education, the government can only say buzzwords. We will invite great universities from abroad and they will fill up the blank. But this is daydreaming. See, if they come here, they are not going to spend their own money to educate the Indians. Of course, the rich students can go there perhaps, because in some cases they could be even better than the IITs, who knows. But this is not the mechanism for uplifting our total education. We have wasted 70 years, and if we think along these lines, we only talk about global education, we only talk about, multidisciplinary. Multidisciplinary is good, but then you have to first make the minimum disciplinary institution proper. That's what I was trying to tell at the beginning of my talk. If you don't pay attention to this, and if you try to fool the people with buzzwords, then nothing will happen. I think this is my answer.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm just quickly read out another question, so then we'll end this webinar. So Shantara Chandan, he wrote actually two questions. One thing is very important, I think, this National Research Foundation NRF formation. They have mentioned this thing in NEP 20. And so, if you want to comment on this, this new.
So let me first take this one, and then I will take the second one.
Okay.
Okay, let me take this one. This one is very important.
Right.
Now you see, let me tell you a small story. There was a king, very powerful. He was trying to do good things with his subjects. Nothing was happening. And then somebody pointed out that, sir, the employees that you have, they are all corrupt. So the king says, then I will have another set of employees to look after the corrupt employees that you already have. And after a few days, again comes the complaint that even the new employees, they are also corrupt. They are just sharing the money from the government. And finally, I don't know, after repeating this exercise for several times, the king decided that nothing will happen. Now you see, our education system is exactly like this, particularly in the hands of this government. It is behaving exactly like this. Now, to begin with, we had the UGC who was looking after the school education. And then there was DAE, DST, CSIR, who was looking after mainly research with fellowships and scholarships. Now, they were not ideal systems. UGC, one knew the problems. Now the question is, if I make UGC defunct and introduce another organization, what is the guarantee that this organization will do well? There is no guarantee. So the problem is, you have not been able to find out the problem with the education, and then who knows the problems of the education? Obviously, people who are handling them, teachers, particularly experienced and expert teachers, they know the problem. But whenever a decision comes, for example, a decision like defuncting the UGC, or in addition to CSIR, this and that, DAE, DST, you have another organization on top, which is NRF. Now, what is the guarantee that NRF will work? So you see, one major problem of all our policies, you will never find the teachers to be. The teachers are a significant part of the endeavor with their experience and so on. See how NEP was introduced. They send general questions to publics, give your opinion in a free format. Now this is meaningless. For example, you decide on online education by sending quickly a well-motivated set of questions, asking each school and college that what facilities you have for online teaching and what more you need from the government. Now this is never done. I asked several principals of colleges in West Bengal. I do not have that much experience about the colleges outside West Bengal. That did you get an information from the government that something is going to happen and they said, no, sir. Even this choice-based credit system, what happened, the universities called a meeting, principals of colleges went there, and they said that the UGC wants choice-based credit system. And you have to do it. And the matter ended there. The reason we are in a mess is that whether I have NRF or see, if you try to read this NEP 2020, you have to be very good at remembering abbreviations. Like NRF, there are at least 20-25 other abbreviations, which will be new organizations. And as if without doing the ground level work, if you just introduce organizations at the higher level, every problem will be solved. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. You have to take the teachers, particularly the experienced teachers, into confidence, and then it works. So this is my answer, because these policies are not formulated. Whether you make an NRA for some ABCD, EFGH, it really doesn't help because it is not formulated in the proper. That is my answer.
Okay, thanks a lot for this. And so I think we should make it an end because it's almost 1.5 hours we're running this webinar. So at the end, I will ask Rajiv Shikdar is one of our joint conveners of DrSO. So at the end, I will ask him to say something as a vote of thanks and closing remarks. Rajiv. Rajiv, can you hear me? Yeah, Rajiv, go ahead. Hello?
Hello,
Yeah, go ahead.
listening me?
If you want, you can switch off your video also.
Hello.
If you have bandwidth problem.
Thanks all my friends and colleagues, leaders, countries.
Yeah, go ahead, Rajiv. Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello. So many friends and scholars from Northeast, Sikkim, Bengal, also Kashmir, and throughout the interior parts of our total countries are here. We have got a chance to discuss on NEP and what is the impact of NEP on this in our discussion.
Rajiv, we cannot hear you. If you can switch off your video and just talk over mic, I think that will be better. Hello, Rajiv, can you hear me? Rajiv, are you there? Can you hear me? No. Yeah, I think there. Okay, then I don't know where you will join. So let me continue in place of Rajiv. So I was not supposed to give this ending remarks, but anyway, as we are facing some problem with Rajiv, so yeah. So thank you all whoever joined from several states, from Jammu Kashmir to Northeast, Arunachal Pradesh and Sikkim and Maharashtra, Kerala. So throughout the India, we have scholars from throughout the India. So thank you all for joining and stay with us throughout the webinar, irrespective of these technical problems we actually faced today. So yeah, these things happen in webinar, but we have to somehow, remain with this. So anyway, we thank to speaker Professor Amitava Datta and Professor Francis K. And I will, okay, Rajiv, You can switch off your video and just continue to speak. I think you have some internet problem. Rajiv, we can't hear you. You have to unmute.
Okay.
Yeah, switch off your video because that will create a problem again.
So our speakers also tell the maximum parts of the national education policy. But as an activist of research scholar movement, we are feeling many problems, a lot of problems in this present COVID pandemic situation, and not only this situation, it is the problems is running, and we also are in this year 72 after 72 years of Indian freedom, but the freedom in research and freedom in higher education is not, we are not getting in this present scenario. In this NEP 2020, we are from our research scholar organization DrSO. We have sent our feedback to HRD Ministry, but they are not accepted it, and but they also deny our feedback on NEP 2020s. We feel that total policies depends on the policies of DrSO, and DrSO also dependent on the policies of science, technology, innovation policy in 2012, also 2005 in national education policy. And all these policies are related with the policies of 1986. Facing that lots of problems. This problem is totally depends on some roots of policies. We feel there are many problems on research funding and also our fellowship problems. We are facing harassment. The speakers also place the problems of infrastructure problems. In this present situation, the problems of recruitment is the most important problem in our present country. So we feel we expected in the policies by the government that they also covered our demand. They also emphasize the needs of the peoples, needs of the researcher, research scholars. We expected, but it is nothing in that policies. What is there in the policies? They also announced to discontinue the MPhil degree and MPhil research. They announced to discontinue the premier UGC like a autonomous academic body. They announced to control the total funding agencies like CSR, DST, DBT, ICMR by the National Research Foundation. We feel it is fully bureaucratic and dictatorship step on the freedom of higher education and research, because we know this all funding agencies like academic bodies is a completely body and affiliated by our constitution. But the government also deny the constitution rules and regulations. They are continuously defunk the total UGC functioning of UGC, CSR, DST, DBT, and all types of funding agencies. There have in total, maybe example, in total Eastern India, there are not a single office in total Eastern India of UGC or CSIR or DST, DBT. These offices are already there, but they are not functioning. So we expect if there are any limitation of UGC or other funding agency, government should fulfill the limitation, should be mature the infrastructure. But a premier institute like UGC, it will not expect that they will completely defund the UGC. But our government is one side. They also UGC converted to HECI and HIRA, Higher Education Council of India, and also HIRA, another committee. And total research fundings, they also create a single window policy in research funding. It is the implementation of single window policy in research funding, but it is not appropriate step of the government in this present situation, because we face in our vast country, there are huge number of subjects, huge number of streams. There are huge critical problems are there. So how government has decided the such type of step like NRA, because a funding agency like ICMR, it is a medical field of medical science. Another funding agency like DST, it is a field of science and technology. So these are completely different from each and every field of our streams. So, but it's completely unexpected. But without the consultation with eminent faculties, educationists, researchers, and also students, without any consultation, they also try to impose such type of policies in our higher education and research. From research scholar organization, we also find that many intellectuals, professors, and also our organization has sent them our feedback and our suggestions on higher education and national policies on 28 February 2019. We also give them our feedback, but they have denied it. And last 1 month ago, due to COVID pandemic situation and like such socio-economic host situation, we have sent them a deputation to the Prime Minister, HRD Ministry, and all Chief Minister in all states with the signatures of 300 scholars. But until they have not give us any response. They emphasis to do the less important to English language in all level of education. But we feel as scholars, English is the most modern language and most language to communicate in our state and also in total world. So we must be emphasis English, and English is the most important language to us. But in that policies, they also mention that English is the less important language. And also what are others matters, they also mention the knowledge of India. It is a syllabus in education. The emphasis, the such type of project, such type of PhD research, the research should be a market-oriented research, self-financing research. They mentioned the research should be based on ancient Indian culture. But in this present era, in this present century, we expect that all research and all our activities, higher education work, also depend on many great men and men of Renaissance. But we know that before freedom, we have got A.P.C. Rai, we have got Meghnad Shah, we have got Satyen Bose, we have got Dr. Mahendra Lal Sarkar, we have got Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, we have got Sharat Chandra, and many persons have produced by our India before freedom. After freedom, day by day, these types of thinking, these types of research, these types of carried the thoughts of Renaissance is completely neglected by our total all governments. So as a research scholars, we feel that research or higher education or in every aspect of our society also depends on education, and education will not be a business matters. But in these national education policies, we observe that it is a completely business design. It is a completely the commercial design on education. They declared that special education zone, but we feel education is for those persons who have more money-based education, not merit, not research, not for society, not for humanities. It is completely hidden in the national education policy in 2020. So from our research scholar organization, we must be fight against this undemocratic decision of the government. We must be fight against the privatization commercial design of this education. We must be fight the pseudoscience and unethical matters in our syllabus. We must be fight the total communalization of education in higher education and research sector also. So from our research scholar organization, we appeal to all scholars, those who are present now. Our motto is research scholar as a human being for the human beings. We want to do research for our society, not for me. So for this purpose, we have built such type of platform, DrSO, Democratic Research Scholar Organization. Or just one point, they also mentioned in all parts of education choice-based credit system and also semester in all level of education. But we feel education itself is a comprehensive knowledge matters. Education itself a compulsory matters. Any education will not be additional. Any education will not be vocation, will not be choice based. Education itself a universal matters. Education itself a compulsory matters to create a man to a great man. So we feel if our motto research scholar as a human being for the human beings, to fulfill our motto, we must be raise our voice against the total higher education and research policy, and like they mentioned in national education policies. And so I request all the scholars in house, they are also present in our house. We are face a lot of problem facing. Many scholars, they are not get electricity. Many scholars, they are not getting hostel facility. Many scholars, they have not minimum amount of fellowship. So it is a special features in our total present in this present century in our country. So we want to build up a scholars community throughout the India, and we also the part of also arrange the part of World Research India March for Science, and it is we have got many eminent scientists who also advises us to build up new research scholar movement. We carry the such responsible to build up the new society, build up the new environment of research. So I request all the scholars to take their step in their institute, in their state, in everywhere. If anyone want to help us, then we will try to help them. You all members are request you build up the research scholar movement in your laboratories, in your total institute, in your total district, also state. We must be support you. At the same times, I appeal all to take our DrSO membership. It is an online basis. So request you to all, if all members, they will communicate with us, and we can send our link to them. You convey our total matters, total thinking to all your friends. We have our Facebook page, we have our YouTube channels. You like and share. Send us your suggestions, any criticism, any opinion. You create any types of scholar interaction program, but total matters also depends on our related in our research problems. I am a researcher, my research topic is research, but my work on research scholar movement is another type of research. If we fulfill our research, or if we want to create the further healthy environment for our future generation, we must be emphasis to mature our total research environment. So thanks a lot all the scholars and also our eminent speakers who are present and also present their valuable speech. So from Democratic Research Scholar Organization as a researchers, welcome for further or for our further movement. Also, we are against one side, our movement is against the for our democratic right. Another side also we fight against the pseudoscience and beliefs also. And another side, our movement is total infrastructure, research funding and fellowship. So I thanks a lot further to all friends, colleagues.
Yeah.
Thank you. Scholar solidarity, long live.
Yeah. Thanks, Rajiv, for this ending remark. So we'll end the webinar here officially then. Thank you all, whoever was there in the webinar. Thanks.